For as long as Pokemon has been around, there's always been this morbid fascination that the community has for Lavender Town. This spooky ghost town from the original Pokemon Red and Green has everything it needs to be a mainstay on those old top 10 scariest places in children's games, and taking one look at it, you can immediately understand why. The place is a ghost town, quite literally, a cemetery where trainers come to bury their dead Pokemon. The place is filled with ghost types, has some really depressing lore following the death of poor little Cubone's mother, and of course, the thing the town is most well known for, that creepy-ass music that plays every time you come here. Just looking at the general atmosphere of Lavender Town compared to every other area in Pokemon, you can quickly understand why this setting became the subject of practically every Pokemon creepypasta under the sun. It just feels like this place was made for these kinds of stories, and people leapt at the opportunity. White Hand and Buried Alive were two stories that came from this trend, which terrified me as a child, thinking that any time I went to revisit those old games, there those characters would be waiting to kill me. But those two paled in comparison to the subject of today's video, perhaps the most iconic Pokemon creepypasta of all time, Lavender Town Syndrome. This creepypasta is one of the most effective of the gaming subgenre in my opinion, because it managed to effectively convince an entire generation of Pokemon fans that it was real. If you're unfamiliar with it, Lavender Town Syndrome is very unique compared to everything else I've covered here. Rather than being your traditional creepypasta which presents itself as some kind of story you can follow along with, Lavender Town Syndrome takes the form of a very short blurb of text going over the phenomenon it's named after. Lavender Town Syndrome, also known as the Lavender Town Tone, states that in very early versions of Pokemon Red and Green, the music that played in Lavender Town would play at such a frequency that only children and young teens would be able to hear it. Upon hearing this unique frequency, it caused those children and teens to take their own lives, usually through acts such as hanging or jumping from great heights. As well as this, older individuals who listened to the song reported experiencing severe headaches as a result of the song. Supposedly following these incidents, newer versions of the game would be released with the frequency completely removed, leading to the versions of Red and Green we know today. At one point near the end of the creepypasta, it's also brought up how the original song was uploaded to YouTube, and apparently by using special software to look at the audio, you can actually see a set of unknown from the second genre games which spell out the phrase, "Leave now." And that is Lavender Town Syndrome, a creepypasta made to convince young children who were fans of these games that the spooky town they went to actually had a much darker side to it that extended beyond the story of the game. And it worked. Like I discussed in my video talking about the Rake, I found that the most effective stories from this time were the ones that were able to actually convince people to some degree that their contents were actually, to some capacity, real. And this one, potentially even more so than the Rake, was able to do so. There are quite a few people out there who straight up believe this was some kind of real hoax as opposed to a creepypasta, and I do not blame them, because growing up on the early internet, this was something everyone was talking about. But why was that? What did this story do especially well to so effectively convince a young audience, and even some older fans, that this was a real phenomenon? Well, I think the answer is a couple of things. First of all, Lavender Town Syndrome does something that not many gaming creepypastas do, that being the fact that it takes advantage of something creepy that already exists in the game it's talking about and tries to expand on it to make it scarier. By using the already creepy music from Lavender Town as its subject matter, this creepypasta is immediately able to immerse the reader because it uses something we're familiar with. It doesn't try to convince you of some new character or concept that feels outlandish, instead trying to make something that was already disturbing to a lot of people even worse. This creepypasta also gets bonus points for using Pokemon as its subject, as this franchise has actually had real-world incidents not far off from what it talks about. One of the most well-known tidbits of Pokemon history is the now infamous episode of the anime titled Computer Warrior Porygon, which contained intense flashing lights which gave hundreds of children across Japan intense epileptic seizures. Stuff like Lavender Town Syndrome is not outside the realm of possibility for this franchise, which made it even easier to believe it could have happened. The other thing this creepypasta does that I feel convinced a lot of people it's actually real was its use of the nocebo effect. For those of you who are unaware of what the nocebo effect even is, it is described as, quote, a situation where a negative outcome occurs due to a belief that the intervention will cause harm. Normally it's used in regards to medicine. However, in situations like this, it can also be used to describe what people experience while listening to this version of the Lavender Town theme. Many people will hear that it can supposedly cause headaches, will listen to the song expecting that to be the case, and that expectation will lead to their brains tricking them into thinking it's actually happening. And when that ends up being the case, it becomes very easy to convince yourself that the rest of the story is actually true. That was what this creepypasta did so effectively. Whether intentional or not, it used the nocebo effect extremely well to immerse readers, making them question to this day whether or not this was a real phenomenon. Of course, though, we are still talking about fiction here. Normally with these videos, I like to try and play into the spookiness of the subject matter by having the video structured in a similar way to the stories. However, with this one, I do feel the need to debunk it because of how many people are still convinced to a degree that it is real. And I have a very, very easy way of doing that. That being the fact that I already have. The background music of this video is the supposedly cursed high-frequency version of the song that causes Lavender Town Syndrome. You've heard it the entire time I've been talking and have not experienced any of the supposed symptoms. The only way this song will have any effect on you is if you are actively seeking it, and even then, it's only a maybe. Something that should be remembered with a lot of these horror stories is that at the end of the day, the scenarios described in them are entirely fictitious. They may try to convince you otherwise, hell, that is the fun of most of them to me, but you do need to remember that from time to time. I only bring this up this time around because of how much this particular story affected me as a kid. A lot of young, impressionable children stumble across stories like this because of the familiarity they have with the source material, and they end up getting scarred by it because it covers things no kids should really be exposed to. I was one of those kids, and this story fucked with me really bad as a result. So instead of playing into the spooky aspects of it like I did with my Smile Dog video or some of the comments on my Mandela video, I figured I'd just put that to rest right now. The fact that I even have to bring this up, though, really should act as a testament to how effective this is. To be able to create a hoax so believable that I still see people in the comments of the Creepypasta Wiki to this day questioning it is really something worth commending. It's very rare that I would ever say that a gaming creepypasta is actually good or at the very least scary, but this one manages to be a diamond in the rough just due to the sheer simplicity of it. With all that being said, though, that'll be all from me for now. I hope you enjoyed this video just as much as I enjoyed making it. I cannot wait to see you here again for whatever my next project ends up being. Goodbye for now.